Welcome back. It is yours truly, Nick of Movie AV Impulse. And if this is your first time here, hit that like. You don't have to subscribe, but I appreciate you hitting that like because it gets me in that algorithm and I have fun doing this. I love talking movies. And this movie I'm going to bring you is a 1998 classic that I think a lot of people forgot about because A, it had fantastic writers, a low budget, it was a B movie, but the acting is terrible. So what movie am I talking about? Well, let's just put it this way. Children in horror movies have always found a way to either show us that they can be easily possessed, just be a little too creepy,
I guess you don't know me very well, Mom.
or just straight up be the devil themselves.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
But this kid is not only creepy, this kid is on a killing spree. And I absolutely love it. The cutaways, the everything. We're going to get into all of it and why you should watch the movie. But first, let's get into that intro. Before we get into that movie, I want to make sure that I throw you another horror anthology because I've been doing it the entire month of October. Direct you over to Shudder. If you don't have Shudder, you can find this on other platforms. You just got to look for it. But this anthology, you're also not going to want to miss on because this had a great plot twist. And at the end, everything comes full circle. The Mortuary Collection is definitely one worth watching. And the 5 stories in it are just fantastic. It's so good that I don't even want to tell you what they are. You should just go check out the movie, see for yourself. Okay, now after the long-awaited time that you spent waiting to hear what movie this is, it is called Milo. And this movie centers around a girl named Claire who, when she was a little girl, for some reason, her and this group of friends were obsessed with this kid, Milo, and what his father did for a living. His father was a doctor who was an abortion doctor, and he ran his own clinic in his house. Why in the world that these girls were obsessed with looking at these fetuses in a jar? They were. So they would all kind of get together and go to this doctor's house and they would go check out these fetuses in a jar. The amazing thing about this story is he goes and kills and hurts these girls. And Claire was one of the lucky ones and a few of her other friends that ended up getting away. But what was really, really funny about the beginning of this movie is it leaves you in this suspense of, is this kid playing doctor right now? I thought in my head, I'm not going to be able to stick with this. I don't know about this one. And then she ends up growing up and she becomes a teacher. She's a substitute teacher in this town. And her friend ends up passing away back home. So, of course, naturally, the story takes us back to her hometown where she ends up taking over the job of her friend who was also a teacher. How convenient. She ends up taking over the class. Then she starts to see Milo again. When this starts to unravel, Milo is just going around and he is killing off her friends. The best thing about some of these kill scenes in this movie is that it's one of those movies where less is actually more because it leads you to your imagination. Sometimes just seeing it happen like that, you kind of just feel disconnected. And with this movie, I was just like, okay, I can kind of see where this is going. I mean, there was a scene where he was slashing up the woman, and while he's slashing her, this blood is just kind of coming out. And I'm thinking in my head, like, wow, for such a low budget movie, it actually looked pretty good. And it looked better than Campfire Stories, which they both kind of had the same budget. While watching this movie, she's thinking that she's going crazy because she's seeing Milo as a kid and she's an adult. So while she's trying to put everything together, of course, it's kind of got this Final Destination vibe where she's always around when a murder happens or was the last person to be with that person when that person passed. The cops start to question her and close in, and they're basically saying, look, we know that this kid is dead. You're just saying this. We don't know why, but you are a suspect. But they don't have any real evidence, and of course they gotta let her go. Typical cliche movie. Well, one of the kids in her class starts to wear the same jacket and is kind of being controlled by Milo. Later on in the movie, towards the end, she goes to Milo's house and she knocks on the door and says, hey, you know, your son is still alive, blah, blah, blah. And the father's saying that's impossible. Like, I don't know what you're seeing, but he drowned. He is dead. And she's like, nope, he's still running around. Well, towards the end of this movie, it has one of the biggest plot twists, and you start to find out why jars that are filled with fetuses are still around. But why are they still around? That's the real thing. In the end, you start to find out where all these women, after they get killed, where they're going, because most of these women that get killed and most of her friends that got killed are all missing people. And you start to find out where they all go. And the plot twist in this movie was well executed. Now, does it have that 80s vibe of being cheesy and horrible acting? Yes, it does. But the writers really sat down and really thought this script out. And I give them a lot of credit for doing it and doing it with such a low budget. Just to make this type of movie without having this big blockbuster budget, sometimes B movies are what make you realize that these A movies sometimes ain't as good as them B movies who literally had no budget. I will again say, look at Evil Dead. That probably had the lowest budget of any horror movie, and yet they did things that horror movies now are still doing and still following in their footsteps. So it just goes to show that even though it's a B movie, it really has some great character, great story development, and the cinematography in this movie is actually pretty well executed considering that it really didn't have this big blockbuster budget. So if you get a chance and you can find it, because even me and my wife had a hard time finding this on DVD, so go ahead and search it out and stick with it, because the end of this movie will really have you thinking, wow, Nick was actually right. This is a really good movie. And I will give my wife one thing. She really knows how to pick out these hidden gems that a lot of people don't know. So go check that out. Don't forget, on your way out, hit that like. Hit that subscribe. I appreciate all my supporters. And we are on our road to 200 by the end of the year. I will see you on that top 5 on Wednesday.
Are you comfortable, Reagan?
Yes,
How old are you?
12.
Is there someone inside you?
Sometimes.